Oh, g'day. Welcome back, everyone. So in today's lesson, we're going to cover how to play Rook endgames. And we're going to do that by going over those four critical concepts on the right-hand side. And as always, we're going to have plenty of examples to show you guys the concepts in action so that you guys can learn them a little bit better and apply them in your games with some live knowledge. So before we go ahead, just encourage you guys to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you guys get value from these. Helps me to make more of the videos and helps me to know what you guys like. And thanks to everyone for voting on my channel for the next video being Rook endgames, which is why I'm making it for you guys. So yeah, the four concepts are rooks belong behind passed pawns. That's number one. Number two, very close behind, is you want to use your rook to cut off the enemy king from your passed pawn's queening square. Number three is keep your king active and involved in the action at all times. And number four is just a quote that you kind of hear from time to time, but it's an old quote: all rook endings are drawn. And I've just added sort of there because in practical play, rook endgames occur in, I think it's 1 in every 12 games if you look at the stats. About every 8 to 10 games have a rook endgame in them. So really common positions, really common endgames, really complex. And what happens in practical play is even if you're winning, it's very easy to stumble and then drop down to a draw or even a loss if you're not very careful. And likewise, the reassuring thing for a defender is if you're defending, if you're behind, it's very easy for your opponent to mess up. So you can go from losing to drawn or perhaps even winning pretty quickly. So this is the first example that we're going to go over. And this is probably the quintessential example of rook endgames. All the principles in one position. We've got a very far advanced passed pawn for white, protected by a rook behind the passed pawn, inactivating this rook by black's rook, and black's king is nowhere near that queening square. It's not an active king, and white has an active king that's going to come marching to that queening square. So how this game could continue, just to illustrate how quickly this position collapses and how quickly white wins the game. White marches that king forward, pushes that rook out, queens the pawn, and once the rook is taken, you got a winning endgame for white. It's just mate in a few moves from here. Now, what if the position was slightly different? What if the pawn, instead of being on a7, was on a4, and the rook still behind the passed pawn on a3, but black's rook is on a5 instead of a8, so there's still a bit of space, and black's king is in a much more active position. This is in fact the draw because black's king is just going to march to that queening square, and white's not going to be able to make any progress in any meaningful way because white's whole plan is to push that pawn to become a queen, and then once black sacrifices that rook, white captures the rook and is a rook up, just like we saw in this endgame. But white's just not going to be able to do that in this position. Black's going to control that a8 square, and it's all going to be fine for black. So this is another example we're going to go over. This is from a middle game. It's all equal. It's 0-0-0 is the evaluation. There's no threats on either side. But black has a slightly more active position. Black's probably threatening to play something like rook d8 and start activating his heavy pieces, or get his rook to c2. The point of this example is to show you how you want to get your rooks to that 7th rank. So black wants to get that rook to c2, and white wants to get a rook onto that 7th rank himself. So white's first move is going to be almost certainly rook c1 to challenge and stop black from getting his rook to that 7th rank, because if that rook comes here, there's pressure on f2, there's pressure on the a2 and b2 pawns, and black here, let's just say, trades. Now black can mess up pretty quickly. Black's best move is probably just to play rook here, because then if white trades, then white's in trouble pretty quickly because that rook's coming down to c2. But if black, on the other hand, trades queens, it's the reverse, because now white's rook is going to enter onto that 7th rank. So if, I don't know, if black plays rook d8, we can continue something like this. Black has to protect that pawn, otherwise they just end up in a pawn down position, and white's going to start marching that king into a more active position, start pushing the pawns up a little bit, and essentially start improving his position slowly, maybe making pawn moves on the king side, locking the queen side pawns and maybe winning one of these and getting that king to an active position. And this rook on the 7th rank, you can see how powerful it is, because it's immobilizing the black rook and it's immobilizing the black king. The black king's got to protect the f7 and the g7 pawns. This rook has to protect the a5 and b5 pawns. And white just has all the chances in the world, whereas black is the one who's defending. So concept from this example, it's not on the list on the right hand side, but watch out for rooks on the 7th rank earlier in the game, right? So from a middle game transitioning into an end game. So this example that we're going to cover is how black defends when he can get his king to the queening square. This is the black king in the corner. Very simple way to illustrate the ways that black can draw. So if you're ever caught in a position like this, you want to get your king in front of that passed pawn, because the only way white's really going to make any progress is by playing that pawn forward. And once that pawn comes forward, look at that. That king cannot move anywhere, actually. So black has some random stalemate threats, like even playing for a stalemate this way. That's a stalemate. Or if in this position, black can just simply go after that pawn here. So white might go here, and then it's just an infinite series of checks. Or black can get tricky, forcing the trade of rooks. Sorry, forcing white to capture that rook in a stalemate, because if white goes here, black can just trade off into a drawn position this way. Likewise, there's some other traps. For instance, if white tries to get the rook to g7 for some reason, again, it's that same stalemate trap. Black can just do whatever he wants with that, with that rook, because white can't take it, and black's just going to win that pawn, and again, it's a drawn endgame. So how about this? How about this position? Looking at those rules on the right-hand side, what do you think white should be playing here? Pause the video because I'm going to spoil it right away. White's going to clinically just cut that king off, right? So you want to stop black from getting his king in front of your queening pawn. Now that black's king is immobilized, you are free to march your king and your pawn up the board, and in a short matter of time, you will get to a position where black will run out of checks. We'll get there soon. And yeah, I won't play the whole game out, but black is just not going to be able to stop white from essentially queening that and getting into the same position as we've looked at before. Last but not least, in terms of these examples, what do you want in terms of what's an easy win for if you've got pawns up? Well, if you've got two connected passed pawns like this, it's typically a pretty easy win, because there's no real technique, I'd say, but it's a principle of just slowly pushing your pawns up, getting your king up, pushing the pawns, slowly pushing black backwards more and more, maybe getting that rook around. Once the king is in a more active position, maybe on b6 or c6, and these pawns are far advanced onto that 6th or 7th rank, Black cannot really stop that in any way. So as long as you don't lose these 2 pawns as white, you're going to win this game by queening one of those pawns. So last but not least, Alehin versus Capablanca from their World Championship match. Alehin is white, and this is probably the most thematic endgame you're going to see from a rook endgame position. White to win. It's very equal. It's not very equal, but white has the advantage, but black has drawing chances as always in a rook endgame, practical drawing chances. White has just played the rook back because White's watched this video back in 1927 and knows that he needs to get his rook behind the passed pawn. So black cannot get his rook behind the passed pawn because if you're defending or attacking, whichever one, you want your rook behind the passed pawn. So if black had his rook on a1, then white can never go behind the passed pawn, and black's actually in an advantageous rook position there. And it increases black's drawing chances. But here, white to play, locks that position, and you can kind of see it's similar to this position, but there's a few more nuances, right? The kings aren't in the center yet, and there's pawns. So how did play continue? I'm just going to blast through it so you guys can see. The kings were centralized. The pawn structure got locked up. White dropped that rook back to a2 to protect both these pawns. And black cannot take that pawn because white's just going to march through and gobble up these pawns. So black is forced to give up position and the white king starts coming in. Black's king becomes the passive piece, stopping the white pawn from queening, and that allows the white king to come in and gobble up these pawns. If you play forward a few moves, white just solidifies his position. Black's trying his best to hold on. White has this magical pawn break on f5, breaking open the position, breaking open black's pawn structure, and after a few more moves, white finds a way to break through and gobble up those final pawns. And black resigned after the next move. And if you can spot the next move that white played, I'll give you a high five if I ever see you. But no, I think you'll get it because it's one of the principles on the right hand side. So pause the video if you want to get it again, if you want to have a crack. Otherwise, it's nice and simple. Rook e7. Again, cutting off that black king from being able to go in front of one of these pawns. And black's king is just never going to be able to come onto the king side. White's going to push these pawns forward along with the king. And again, we've seen this story play out many times in the previous examples. White's going to win that rook and then win the game. So there you have it. A few examples and some simple concepts to apply to your games and really improve your rook endgame play. Honestly, follow these principles rather, as your guiding stars for your rook endgame play. We're not computers. We can only play like humans, and humans follow principles. So follow them and you will win more games and lose less games. So thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Come see the next one and peace out.